She was 10, barely old enough to ride her bike past the corner without asking permission, and yet on that ordinary afternoon, she was treated like a threat. Not because she did anything wrong, not because she broke a rule, but because she walked into a store with skin the owner had already decided was suspicious. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was who her mother was. And what happened next. It didn't just shatter his assumptions, it made sure he'd never forget them again. It started on a Saturday, a quiet, slow-burning morning in suburban Georgia. The sun had just cut through the last stretch of clouds, and the sidewalk still carried the shimmer of a night rain. Brielle and her mother, Dana, were headed downtown, not for anything fancy, just a little shopping trip, something simple, something sweet. Dana had just wrapped up a 10-hour overnight shift. She was exhausted, but Brielle had aced a tough math test the week before, and Dana had promised her they'd go out to celebrate. No fast food, no gifts. Brielle didn't want those. All she wanted was to walk through the aisles of the little boutique store on Kingman Street, the one with the colorful windows and the sparkly pens and the overpriced stationery she never really needed, but always dreamed about. The moment they walked in, Brielle lit up. She didn't run. Dana had taught her better than that, but her steps were light, eager. She drifted toward the back of the store where they kept the journals, the ones with soft velvet covers and tiny locks that clicked when you twisted them just right. Dana stayed by the entrance. She had a habit of giving Brielle space, letting her move, explore, exist freely. But she was always watching, always close enough to reach her in seconds. That's when it started. He was behind the register when they came in, mid-50s, balding with the kind of stiff smile that didn't reach his eyes. At first he said nothing, but as soon as Dana stepped aside and Brielle walked toward the back, alone, in his view, his whole posture changed. He leaned forward, narrowed his eyes, and then, without a word to Dana, without a question, he walked straight toward Brielle. She was crouched by a lower shelf, flipping through a journal with silver stars across the cover, when she noticed his shadow. She looked up, startled. "Hey," he said, his tone sharp, like a teacher catching a student in the middle of something. "You can't be back here by yourself." Brielle blinked. "My mom's right there." "Doesn't matter." He cut her off. "This isn't a place to wander. If you're not buying something, I need you to leave." She froze, her fingers still on the journal. And he stepped closer. "I said, go wait outside." From the front of the store, Dana's eyes had already locked onto the movement. She saw the man, saw her daughter stiffen, and in 2 strides, she was there. "Is there a problem?" Dana asked calmly, but her voice had an edge, a warning. The man turned, surprised, almost annoyed. "I didn't see you," he said. "She was back here by herself. We've had incidents before. I was just being cautious." Dana kept her eyes on him. Not a flicker of a smile. "Cautious?" He shrugged. "Kids come in, mess things up, take things. I can't take risks." Brielle stood there, cheeks flushed, eyes flickering between her mother and the man. Dana looked down at her daughter, then back at him. "She touched a journal, that's all she did." "I didn't say she stole anything," he muttered, defensive now. "But you understand. It's just protocol." Dana reached into her purse slowly. He flinched a little, but she didn't pull out a wallet. She pulled out a badge. The air shifted. A silver shield glinting in the store's warm light. Atlanta Police Department. Detective Dana Harris. The man's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "She's not a suspect," Dana said, voice low, steady, lethal. "She's a little girl. You didn't see a kid looking at a notebook. You saw a black child and assumed she didn't belong." He stammered. "Something about it being a misunderstanding. About not wanting trouble." Dana stepped closer. "Do I look like trouble to you?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Behind her, Brielle had said nothing, but now she moved closer, standing by her mother, eyes wide. Dana didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just let the badge speak for itself. "You don't get to hide behind protocol," she said, "not when your assumptions are this loud." The store was quiet. A couple standing by the window had gone still. Another shopper clutched her purse a little tighter. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan spinning above them, and in the middle of it all a little girl stood beside her mother, dignity intact, spine straight. Dana returned the badge to her purse, took Brielle's hand, and turned to leave. But she stopped, just before the door, and looked back at the man behind the counter. She'll remember this, so will I. The bell above the door jingled as they walked out into the sunlight. But the weight of what happened inside didn't disappear with the door. It sat on the sidewalk. It followed them to the car. And it stayed with Brielle long after the day was over. Because it wasn't just about the journal, or the man, or the moment. It was about something deeper, a system, a pattern, a wound too old and too ignored. But the story doesn't end here. This moment, it was just the beginning. If this story hit you, subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. The story continues, and it only gets more intense from here. The car ride home was mostly quiet, not the kind of silence filled with tension, but the kind that comes when a child is trying to understand something that doesn't make sense. Brielle sat in the back seat, one hand still holding the soft velvet journal Dana had insisted they buy before leaving. She didn't open it. She just held it against her chest, like a question that didn't have an answer. Dana glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She wanted to speak, wanted to explain. But how do you explain that the world will judge your child before she even says a word? That some people only see threat, never innocence? So she said the only thing that felt right. You didn't do anything wrong. Brielle didn't respond, but she nodded, slowly. When they got home, Dana made lunch, grilled cheese, Brielle's favorite. They watched cartoons on the couch, like nothing had happened. But something had. Something permanent. Later that evening, after Brielle went to her room, Dana sat alone at the kitchen table. Her badge sat in front of her, not clipped to her belt, not tucked away, just lying there. Cold metal, warm memory. She'd joined the force to protect, to serve. But moments like this reminded her why she could never take the badge for granted. Because for every rule she upheld, there were silent codes still shaping the world around her child. Dana didn't want revenge. She didn't even want an apology. She wanted change, and she knew exactly where to start. Monday morning, Dana was back in uniform, crisp, clean, focused. She didn't go to the station first. She went to the store, not to cause a scene, but to be seen, fully, clearly. She walked in, same time of day, same manager behind the counter. He looked up and froze. Dana didn't wait for him to speak. She approached the counter, hands at her sides. "This isn't a complaint," she said. "This is a conversation you need to have." He opened his mouth to deflect, to defend, but she held up a hand. "Listen." And he did. She told him about Brielle, about what he looked past, about what he projected. Not in anger, but in clarity, in truth. "You don't have to be a bad person to do damage," Dana said. "You just have to stop seeing the whole person in front of you." The manager's face changed, slowly, like he was finally hearing words he hadn't been taught to listen for. He didn't apologize, not exactly, but he didn't argue either. And sometimes silence is the beginning of understanding. Before she left, Dana gave him a card, not personal, official. "If you ever want to train your staff differently, if you ever want to understand how bias works, call me. I'll help you. But pretending it's not there, that ends now." She left with nothing in her hands but her dignity. And that was enough. But the story didn't stop with her. Later that week, Brielle had a school writing assignment. Describe a moment that made you feel proud. She wrote about a journal, about a man who didn't see her, and a mother who made sure he did. She read it out loud in class. Her teacher teared up. Her classmates clapped. Dana found the essay tucked in Brielle's backpack a few days later. She didn't say anything, just read it in the quiet of the kitchen again. It wasn't just the words that moved her. It was the fact that Brielle had written them, not in anger, not in fear, but in voice, clear, proud, unshaken. That was the real victory. The store incident faded, life moved on. But something in Brielle didn't just survive. It grew stronger, wiser, bolder. She didn't stop loving notebooks. She didn't stop exploring shelves or asking questions or stepping into unfamiliar places. She just carried something new with her now, the understanding that she mattered, that her presence was not a threat to be managed, but a light to be respected. Years later, Brielle would grow into her own name, into her own voice. She wouldn't forget the man. But more importantly, she would never forget the woman who stood beside her and showed her that she was never small, that she never had to shrink, that being seen and seen fully wasn't a privilege. It was her right. And that badge, the one Dana carried, it wasn't what made her powerful. It was her love, her presence, her refusal to let her daughter believe, even for a second, that she was anything less than worthy. Because when the world tried to write its assumptions into her daughter's story, she took the pen back and rewrote the ending.